Do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, but been declining, to be honest with you.
Okay. If you could go back in time, you could either vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Who would you vote for?
At that time, Donald Trump.
Okay. No, like if you could go back right now.
If I could go back right now, uh, it's difficult, but probably still Donald Trump.
Okay. Why is that?
Um, More simply because of Kamala Harris. I simply believe that the way she was able to achieve the nomination so quickly and the way that the Democratic Party did not conduct open primaries was simply just not appropriate. I think Joe Biden was sidelined, frankly. I thought it was disgusting how he was treated. And I simply believe we didn't have enough exposure to her to really see what if she was presidential material.
So she was voted in through the primaries because it is the case that we voted for the Biden-Harris ticket. And if Biden were to step down, Harris would step up on that ticket. So we technically did vote for her in the primaries.
I've seen this argument. I really I understand that she was on the ticket and that that ticket did receive 14 million votes in the primaries, but I really do believe that people were voting for Joe Biden there. I really do not believe that if there had been
They
an
voted
open
for the
primary.
Biden-Harris ticket.
Yes, but that's a false equivalency. I believe that if Kamala Harris had been in the primaries instead of Joe Biden, more people would have entered the primary, and therefore more votes would have been siphoned away from the Kamala Harris sole Kamala Harris ticket if the
Yeah, but
Democratic primaries were conducted correctly.
no one knew that she was going to step up at that time.
I understand that, but it still doesn't negate the
We
fact
knew
that she
that
was
she would.
sidelined.
We knew that she would in the context that Biden steps down, though. That's just the reality.
Yeah, I understand that, but Joe Biden stepped down at like literally the last minute in the last 2 to 3 months before the election.
Yeah, and I advocated for him to
That's
do that. That was great. Are you even a Democrat?
Yeah, but I simply
If
don't
you're not
think
a
that's
Democrat, why do you? Well,
a fair
it's the party.
equivalency.
It's so the I think that the party process should work this way. If the president steps down, the vice president steps up in that
Okay.
circumstance. I think that's actually following the Constitution. I think that's the best set of precedents that we could follow from a party standpoint.
But do you agree with how the internal party mechanisms were conducted in order to eliminate Kamala Harris's competition towards the end there, and in order to basically have her sort of not just installed sort of into the role
No
of
one ran
okay, she's
against her.
going to run for the presidency.
Wait,
No
why
one
didn't
ran
people run
against her,
against her?
but no one ran against her. But that was influenced by internal party mechanisms. There were several reports at the time, and going forward, that several of her competitors, including competitors that would have performed, I would assume decently well, were sidelined because her team had the access and wanted to be placed at the top in
Wait,
that
how are they
position.
sidelined? What was it based upon their own decisions to not run? Like
They, they were influ-
what was the sidelining
they were
mechanism?
influ- they were influenced by elites. They were influenced by
In what
elites in
way?
the party in order.
So people talked to them and they changed their mind and they didn't want to run because of that. That's fair. That's okay to do.
Even if political consequences are on the line.
It depends on what you're talking about. I don't think there were political consequences here
Well,
specifically.
why is it fair? Why is it fair that if party elites speak with certain politicians in order not to run, and ordinary people speak with certain people not to run? Why is it that party elites speaking with
What
certain
party elites are you
influential
talking
people in the
about?
party?
I feel like that's just a statement you're making.
Chuck Schumer, leadership in the House, including Nancy Pelosi.
So why would
Towards
progressives
the end there,
listen to them?
progressives don't listen to them, and I commend
Okay,
it. I think
then why didn't they
progressives in the
run?
party have a lot more backbone. But because the progressives in the party haven't had a standing, the progressives in the party, especially Bernie Sanders, have been robbed. He was robbed in 2016, and he was robbed in 2020.
Okay, so you're just saying he didn't do it because he was robbed. That's it.
Not, but again, I'm not saying that Bernie Sanders is the entirety of the progressive wing, but the progressive wing has stood no chance in 2024 because of unfair party mechanisms, okay, including the existence of the superdelegate system. I think that progressives were sidelined by the Democratic Party system in 2016 and in 2020, which was completely unfair.
Well, I mean, I don't dispute you there, but that doesn't change the reality that this is a democratic process for her to be in that position, and that 80% of the Democratic Party was satisfied with her being the nominee, and all the progressives supported her as the nominee.
Okay, if you say that all progressives supported Kamala Harris being the
Well,
Democratic
I was
nominee.
I when I was talking about like Bernie and the people who are in office.
Okay, so the major progressives who are sort of in the positions of power towards the Senate. I thought you were talking about the progressive wing of the party, that being the voters, because there was some dissent in the
Yeah,
progressive
I'm
wing
not
of
I'm
the
not
party
disputing
with
that.
regards to. Right, yeah, but no, I guess if that's fair, if you're taking polling and the satisfaction of Democratic voters her being at the top, then sure, I think that's a fair argument. And in fact, you made an argument with the previous guest that you think that domestic production would be increased through tariffs. I would have a more liberal position than you. I don't think I'm against tariffs. I don't think domestic production would be increased by tariffs. I simply don't think the U.S.
I'm sorry,
companies,
you're just
U.S.
wrong.
manufacturing, and what.
You're just wrong. That's how tariffs work. Like, what do you think a tariff is?
I think a tariff is a tax against the import of goods from foreign countries, but I don't think just because imports from foreign countries are taxed does not mean U.S. production and U.S. manufacturing is suddenly going to ramp up the capacity, especially in the 4 years'
No,
time
it
with the
creates an
decline in
incentive. It,
manufacturing.
it it does create an incentive for that though, because the prices would go up.
It creates an incentive. Not well. I believe that the tariffs Trump has implemented, they absolutely don't create enough of an incentive. Otherwise, there would be more manufacturing plants built. I don't think there's been nearly enough manufacturing plants built in order to meet the capacity that foreign production could
Well,
potentially
I would
surmise.
agree it
They
wouldn't be
do
able.
surmise to this
Wait, wait,
day.
wait. You're misunderstanding my point. I'm not saying it meets the same set of level. I'm just saying it does cause an increase in domestic production to some degree, which is factually
Well,
true.
I'll say this. I'll say sure. I believe so, but I don't believe to any significant degree that it would boost the American economy. I don't even believe
Wait, wait. That's what I
domestic
said.
product.
I said it net declines the GDP. Did
I
you listen
agree.
to me?
I agree. I'm against tariffs. That's why I personally am against tariffs. I think the only way that American manufacturing could potentially be stimulated is with heavy government incentives to corporations that are already in the net profit. So there's really no incentive for them. It's just more money for them in order to move the manufacturing here. So it's really just a nationalistic position that position is generated from.
Okay, so then like I'm confused what your point is here then with that. What were we previously talking about? Because that
Well,
was
you
just
well you
something you
said
agreed with.
domestic production was increased. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't saying that domestic production would increase to the point where it could meet the capacity the foreign production meets. I mean, the foreign
That's
production in
clearly a
China.
separate claim. That's clearly a separate claim. But what were we talking about prior to that? Because you used that as a deflection mechanism.
We were moving on from the topic. I just agreed that if you believe that Kamala Harris, if you believe she had support after she was installed and she was made the head of the Democratic primary, if you believe that she had the support and you believe that she was a properly consolidated candidate, I think that's fair and that's a
Oh, okay.
position.
Well then, sure. If you think that's fair, then what would be the reason why you don't support or why you support Donald Trump then?
Absolutely. So I think that Donald Trump fundamentally, I think that he performed moderately well for the United States economy up until COVID-19 during his first term. I think the USMCA was a great replacement for NAFTA. I think he should have done more in the taxation end. I think the U.S. tax cuts that were implemented during his term did not. I don't believe they went far enough, and I think that the way he implemented it was substandard, but to the point where yeah, I think it did create an increase in business activity and GDP overall. I likewise think that his building of relationships with foreign allies and his building of relationships with internal industry within the United States,
You would
likewise,
agree this is not
probably.
true, especially with his tariff policy now. His tariff policy does not cause an increase in the GDP,
I,
right?
I like I said previously, though, I do not support the tariff policy. I
Yeah,
do
I
not
understand, but
support.
that's his
And by the
economic
way,
policy
but
today.
I understand that, but again, whether businesses perceive it to be a serious economic policy is different because I don't believe the tariffs are going to end up standing once they get to higher level courts. The revenue from the tariffs is already irrelevant. The tariff from the revenues, the revenue from the tariffs has already been frozen by courts. So that Scott Bessent is currently trying to fight to get back in federal courts, but the revenue has been frozen because they've been generated at an executive level.
So you're arguing the tariffs are going to be so bad for our economy and so bad for our system that they won't go through the context of the courts, they won't go through our systems, and the tariff
No,
revenue will be
well,
negligible.
no,
So we're not getting
no,
any benefit from it. So
no,
then, like, really, what economic policy does he have that's so good? Because if it was
decrease
the
in
tax cuts and
regulation
job,
and decrease in tax.
What regulation?
Decrease in regulation and decreases in regulation in environmental regulations on businesses that are increasing American energy, decreases on regulation for healthcare businesses, decrease on regulation.
Can we stop with the first one? What environmental
Sure.
regulations would you like to gut?
I wouldn't say he gutted environmental regulations. I think that's overstating things.
No, I'm asking which ones would you want to gut? Which ones would you want to get rid of?
Primarily the rebates for the production of natural energies in the United States, that being wind, solar, hydroelectric, these being clean energy sources that have been.
No, I was asking for like a regulation.
Over-subsidized.
What rebate are you referencing?
I'm referencing Biden era subsidies for wind, solar. That was included.
That's not a
in the,
regulation. That's a
Inflation Reduction
subsidy.
Act. Oh, for regulations, I would say the inclusion of regulations on the coal industry, including the on the production of coal,
Like
and
what
how
aspects of the
that has been
production?
regulated.
Like, do you want to get rid of like scrubbers that they use? Like,
No,
like those
obviously
are
not. Well,
necessary.
well, that's necessary for safety. I think I don't think Trump has stripped safety regulations. I think he's stripped. I
What
think he's
environmental
stripped
regulations are you referencing? It sounds like you don't know a specific environmental regulation.
on oil, on gas, on coal. He has stripped regulations as it pertains to the production of this energy.
You don't know a specific regulation, so then like you're just saying you don't want regulations on these in general, but you don't know whether or not it'd be effective or not effective to get rid of if you don't know the specific regulation, right?
I'm not speaking. Yeah, no, you're right. I don't understand the specific regulations. I'm speaking
Yeah.
on what effect are we speaking about here, though?
Well, you were saying that like getting rid of regulations was like a good thing, but you don't know what regulations, so then how would you know it's good? Because just we can agree there are plenty of regulations that should exist, and getting rid of them would be actually really harmful. So the idea is that you'd have to know what particular regulations you're getting rid of in order to be able to know that
Sure.
the effect was good. And if you can't mention any of them, well then seemingly like that point's
I
invalid.
mean, it's hard for our own government to determine the regulations that are being stripped. I mean, there's such a quantity that we just stripping regulations across the board can lead to some positive elements being stripped and some negative elements, obviously being stripped as well. But I really think across the board stripping is not appropriate.
Okay, so then then if we don't know the certain circumstances, then it would be an invalid point to bring up on the live, right? Because we wouldn't be able to mention specifically which one it was a benefit to get rid of.
Sure.
I
agree.
always give people pushback on this because I do think that when people say, "Oh, I want deregulation," it's something that generally sounds good, but we have to know the specific cases with the regulations in order to know whether it's effective, because there are plenty of regulations that are necessary.
I'd say, okay, well, let's move on from regulation then, because I think you make a fair point. I think without being able to, if the government can't even name the specific regulations that they're trying to strip, then I think you're right. It's unfair to bring it up on the live. So. I'd say I'm disappointed with the Biden performance. I was disappointed with the Biden performance. I think his performance led to stagnation in the economy. I hate how bills like the Inflation Reduction Act and at least what he was able to pass and Build Back Better. I hate how those were introduced and congressmen and women were
I
forced
love the
to,
Inflation Reduction Act. It's great. What do you disagree with?
I disagree with the pork bill spending that was included in the act.
Like what? Because it was deficit reducing.
You believe the Inflation Reduction Act was increasing, decreasing instead of deficit neutral? Because the Congressional Budget Office.
It was deficit decreasing. They said it had a slight.
How would it be?
They said it had a decrease. The Congressional Budget Office.
How slight? The deficit increased.
I think it was a few hundred billion.
That's barely a dent when you think about the fact that Joe Biden.
That's so then whatever. If you want to say a few hundred billion is negligible, sure. But then like you're making an argument that it's pork filled isn't justified.
I wasn't I wasn't referring to, well, I mean, regardless of whether the Inflation Reduction Act had an effect on the deficit, doesn't have an effect on whether there was pork barrel spending. Is pork barrel
Really?
spending okay if there's a decrease, even if there's a slight decrease in spending? Do you think it's okay to have pork barrel spending if that's a part of it?
Well, then you have
Even
to
if
tell
it's
me
a
what
way to get
aspects of
the,
it were pork spending, because apparently you're okay with the 3.4 trillion added to the debt under the big beautiful bill. That's not pork-filled spending, but the Inflation
I never
Reduction Act
said
that
that.
was deficit reducing is.
I never said anything but the big beautiful bill. You're assuming that I had a claim as to whether I supported that bill or not. You're putting words in my
Sure.
mouth
Do
about
you
whether
support the big
I
beautiful
support
bill?
that bill. Absolutely not.
Okay, so then you agree that that's definitely a worse set of circumstances for being a pork-filled bill, correct? Comparative to the Inflation Reduction Act. So anything that you bring up specifically about Biden and Harris, I can show you how it's worse with Trump.
Just because, well, like I said, I mean, just because there was an alternative and there is, increasing. I don't think. I think that the big beautiful bill didn't do, regardless of anything on the deficit. I think I think the decrease in Medicaid spending without any type of bolstering of the public health capacity in this country was not a smart decision. And obviously, even let's talk from from an outsider perspective, from public relations perspective, I think a decrease in Medicaid spending is just a terrible decision. When that gets released into the media, I mean, with the amount of people that receive benefits from that program, it's just a terrible public relations look. And it was characterized. I don't know if you remember, but it was characterized in the media as an increase in the tax cuts. But what it really was an extension of the tax cuts that were already initiated in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So any of the benefits that were to be any of the business activity benefits that were to be seen from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act were already seen by 2019. So I think the implication that there would be an increase in business activity from the big beautiful bill is just really not justified from the stance that it extended those tax cuts.
I understand that you disagree with the big beautiful bill, and I think that's great. My point then is that that's a worse pork-filled bill than anything that you could mention under the Biden-Harris administration. So what's up with the complaining about the Biden-Harris administration when it's worse for Trump?
Because if Kamala Harris, because we're speaking about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, if we're speaking about the continued election of Kamala Harris, I think that spending would have, because of her, what she proposed during the campaign. I think that spending would have, that type of pork spending would have continued under Kamala Harris. I have no assumption to believe that she would have discontinued that practice, or she would have put her foot down on the continuation of bills filled with pork. So I think it's an overall neutral effect. And whether you want to talk about how whatever bills she would have been able to manage through, which likely wouldn't have been much considering that Republicans, even if through a slim majority, did get elected to Congress, if she had been able to pass anything, I don't think it would have been a discontinuation of the pork that was initiated under Joe Biden.
So again, I'm asking so what specifically about what Trump and Harris have done that
Mm-hmm.
shows that it's worse for Harris comparative to Trump? How maybe a specific?
Sure. So let's talk about the higher education proposals made under Joe Biden. So that would be his proposal to decrease the student loan debt. Actually, it's from my state that the Secretary of Education he came from to lead that proposal. I think that Joe Biden knew from the beginning when he made those proposals, which I don't know if you remember, were in 2022, right before the midterm election, to conveniently propose to have a $10,000 reduction in student loan debt and 20,000 for people who reduce Pell Grants. I think he knew from the beginning that those proposals were not going to succeed in federal court, and he was able to use those not as a genuine proposal to get student loan relief to Americans, which, even though he did pass during his administration, it was to an incredibly minor effect. I think he used people who are suffering from whatever student loan debt they've incurred. I think he used that as a bargaining chip in order to make the court system and those structures in the United States to make those, in essence, martyrs.
Okay, so your biggest issue with Biden isn't something that he did to harm the economy, because you were arguing that they did bad for the economy. It's that he was
Yes.
specifically just utilizing something that he knew he wouldn't be able to get past, which one, he didn't know that. That's just not true. There's no basis for that at all. There's definitely a lot of plausible deniability from Biden on that because he definitely did not know, and that's why he underwent a different type of legal pathway, right? Given that he realized that that was not a legal pathway to go through it. So I don't really know. It, also, some was. Secondly, like, I mean, do you remember Trump literally being like, he's going to lower grocery prices, he's going to get rid of income tax, he's gonna
I know.
he's gonna lower the prices of everything.
I think the Trump statement that he's going to get rid of income tax is ridiculous. I think that you would need at least 60 votes in the Congress in order to even get something remotely like that considered. I don't even think half of the Republican Congress half of the Republican caucus is in favor of succeeding in proposals like that. And I would like to see what the replacement would be for those structures, even though I do support a decrease in income taxes.
So it's
But
I
to
don't
say that, but to
I
say
don't see
my
how you're
to
liking
say
Trump better because Trump is worse in this respect. He uses things like this all
what
the
worsen.
time, right? That he knows he can't do and he knows is ridiculous in order to be able to get people's votes. He did that all the time. The Epstein files, he could release that, but he decides not to.
The Epstein files. If you want to bring that up, that's one of the biggest reasons that I'm sort of falling out of favor with Trump as a political leader. But to say that, first of all, my biggest issue with Biden was the existence of his higher education proposals is nonsense. I would never make that claim. And second, Trump's. I'm not even going to call it a proposal because he makes a lot of statements, so I can even barely consider that a proposal. But the claims he made about taxes, whether it be the income tax was just one of those proposals. There were other proposals that he made, such as taxes on overtime and taxes on paid tips that he did actually manage to accomplish in the Big Beautiful Bill. So that's just one of the tax proposals that he mentioned. So it's not like across the board all of Trump's tax proposals have not been enacted, and it's only been a year in. So I don't want to make a blanket statement.
Okay, so I don't really know how we got that. I was asking about the Epstein files, right? Like why didn't he release the Epstein files?
There's nothing I can disagree with you on that. I 100% disagree with the handling. 100% disagree with the handling on the Epstein files case. I think that the cover up that's been orchestrated by the goons in government has been disgusting. Whether Trump or whoever is implicated, I think that the way that situation has been handled purposefully. I do not
Sure.
believe
So
that
you
it is
wouldn't support them?
Wouldn't support who?
Would you? So he specifically says anyone who wants them to be released, that they should not support him because they're a hoax. So like, why do you support a guy that doesn't want you to support him?
I think that's a terrible statement, but it's a change. But not just directly from Donald Trump, but for everybody related to the administration. The narrative about the Epstein files, as you know, can change week to week. It can not only turn. I mean, last week it was he was an FBI agent informant that was providing information to the FBI about Epstein, and that was suddenly dropped this week. So, as you know, the narrative can change very quickly, and even statements from the same human being can change very quickly. So, I'm not gonna. If you say that you want me to take that as a genuine statement, then yes, obviously, I think that's gross. I do not like that statement at all.
Okay, so then so why do you still support Trump is essentially my question. Given that it seems like to you very obviously that he's not a good guy, he's not a good candidate, you're losing faith in him.
I think he was a good kid. I think on that one issue, let's back to the Epstein files. I think first of all, I think that the perspective of the issue was different in 2024 when he was running. He was saying entirely different things about this issue when he was running. I hate how I'm disgusted with how Fox News. I don't know if you are familiar with this, but he did an interview with Fox News during the election. I believe this was post-election, and there were several anchors from Fox and Friends that were involved in this interview. And Fox News, they released a segment to the public in which Trump made a comment that he would support the release of the Epstein files. We then learn from News Corp months later, when this becomes a huge issue when Trump is inaugurated, and the release of these files has become sort of a hot topic. That News Corp now releases the full segment, whether inadvertently or not, that he had made a secondary comment in which he would only partially support the release of the Epstein files because people who are currently alive will be implicated. So we were deceptively informed by major media corporations before the election about the stance of President Trump on the release of the Epstein files, and I believe that even as a generalization, that his stance was different at that time. And so I don't believe that it's fair to make the assumption that we can only make our election decisions based on the information we have available to us. I believe that if I had known what the stance was going to be on the Epstein files as of today, I believe that would have been a complete negative on that issue when considering whether I would vote for him as a candidate.
So knowing what you do now, would you still vote for Trump?
That's hard. I mean, that's really hard for me, and especially over the past couple of months, I've been very. I mean, the first term, okay. I mean, I think COVID was sort of a severe, a radical 180-degree turn for the Trump administration during the first term. But I think overall, 2017 to 2000 to March of 2020, it had its ups, it had its downs. But I think with the performance in the first term, going back, I mean, I've been to say the least disappointed. So that's a hard thing for me. But I guess if I had to lean, so I mean, maybe I would not. I would say this under all circumstances. I would not vote for Kamala Harris. But as to whether I would vote for Donald Trump, uh, the answer is very quickly turning towards a no.
Okay.
And I would definitely not
All right.
in the
Well,
future, like if JD Vance or Marco Rubio were to come up in 2028, like JD Vance, who I think is I actually like JD Vance. I actually like JD Vance back in 2019 going into 2023 going into 2024, on the surface. And now that we've gotten to see more of him, and I guess more out of Marco Rubio, who I don't know if you would consider him a more serious person, no matter what you would think about his policy positions. I really don't have much favorability towards either of them either. I'm going to be honest with you.
okay. Well, I appreciate you coming up, man.